Hey, welcome back to the Pursuit of Purpose show. This is episode 6. We just interviewed Pastor Ken Bosse. He's the lead pastor at New Life Church in Raymond, New Hampshire. And in addition to being a lead pastor, he is also a life coach and an avid hiker and a published author.
Yes, and his new book, They Said It Was Dangerous, just released October 2nd. It'll be out on Amazon. It's also right here. If you're an avid hiker, or maybe not, it's a great read. His other releases will be right here as well. Without further ado, let us get into the show. Thank you.
Obviously, you kind of have a little bit of a different path to becoming a pastor than most would say. It wasn't the traditional, growing up in church, going right to seminary. You kind of had a little bit of a different past. With as much detail as you're comfortable going into, could you kind of describe what your life was like growing up?
Yeah, sure. So I was born at a very young age.
Really?
People ask me, what sign were you born under? I say maternity. But I was raised in a Catholic family, so that was like my religious upbringing. We always went to Mass every Sunday. But as I got older, it really didn't do anything for me. And so I used to tell my folks that I was going to church, and I wouldn't. I'd just sit in the parking lot, smoke cigarettes, and then go back. And so when I got out of high school, I was really kind of like a loner. Like, people find it hard to believe that I was very shy. I stuttered a lot. I was just really, really afraid of engaging with people because I just thought like I was stupid. And if I opened my mouth, I would prove it. So I was really like that guy in the background all the time. And so when I went into the workforce, graduated high school, went into the workforce, the company that I started working for was a plant from New York, up in the Erie area, and the Erie Scientific was the name of the company, and they started in Portsmouth, and I started with them. They were hiring all 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, basically, and unfortunately, what the company was cutting microscope slides. That's what they did, and I was in the cutting department, actually cutting the slides. And unfortunately, that whole factory turned into the drug capital of Portsmouth. There was just drugs flowing in and out because it was production work. So the faster you work, the more money you would make. They would actually pump in rock and roll music just to keep us all happy, and they didn't even care. As long as we were cutting glass, they didn't care. And it was after a short while, I was there, maybe about a year after I was there, they wanted to start a night shift. So they saw something in me that I didn't see, and they made me the foreman of the night shift. And so I had about 12 guys and one girl who was quality control in my department, and we worked 10-hour shifts. We went to work at 3:30 and worked till about 2 in the morning. I can't remember the exact hours, and it was unsupervised. Maybe there was somebody floating around after hours, but pretty much it was all unsupervised. And so we were just doing a lot of drugs, and then at night drinking, on the weekends drinking, going to nightclubs, dance halls, stuff like that. And I was smoking 2 packs a day. I was probably under the influence of something 6 days a week anyways, at least. Okay. And so it just started getting really, really bad. I couldn't handle being in middle management because, my brain was being fried. So I ended up quitting that job, getting another job at a lobster trap company, building wooden lobster traps. And within a short period of time, they made me the foreman of the saw shop. And that sort of turned into the same thing. There was just a lot of drugs flowing and stuff. And so there was a guy my age we were doing similar stuff, and he actually went in for a physical, and the doctor, and he was very honest, he told the doctor his lifestyle. And the doctor said, if you don't stop, you'll never see 30. And so my mind had fried completely out. I just couldn't even think or anything. I couldn't process. And it became a wake-up call to me. Like I was kind of self-evaluating myself and saying, what are you doing to yourself?
How old were you at this time?
At that time, I was like 21. Okay. And I was just like, really, really in bad shape. I used to, my dad was a state trooper at one point in time in New Hampshire. And I remember him coming into my room once to talk to me because I used to go out clubbing. And then the next morning, I would have to look out the window to see if my car was in the yard to see if I had driven home. I didn't even remember if I had driven home.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times, unfortunately, it was. I mean, I was just driving drunk and everything. And so my dad told me, he said, if you kill yourself, that's one thing. But if you kill somebody else, that's a whole other thing. And that kind of hit me too. And then around the same time, I read a book called The Late Great Planet Earth, which was all about Bible prophecy and the end of the world, and it kind of painted a picture of what was going on in the Middle East, being the timeline. And at the end of the book, it said, if you're not ready, you just need to ask Jesus into your heart. And being raised Catholic, I kind of knew about Jesus, but I didn't know about like having a walk with him and accepting him as your Savior into your heart. So I did. I just got down on my knees beside my bed, and I asked Jesus to come into my heart. And that's when everything began to change.
Wow.
It was a process, obviously, and it's still not over. But things began to change for the good, and that's how I got saved. That's how I started.
Yeah. So you say you were kind of in like a lifestyle of drugs, and which types of drugs? I think pretty much just everything.
Yeah, well, it started off as like some pot. I started smoking pot a little bit before I went to that company, but not a lot. And I'll tell you what, this is why I'm a really big person against legalizing marijuana, because it is a gateway drug. I mean, I'm proof of that. I started off smoking dope, and then the dope makes you kind of dopey. And so, plus we were doing production work, so we wanted to go fast. So then I started doing speed, then started doing cocaine, then started doing acid, and it just started, escalating. And it was just so unhealthy. It was just, plus drinking like crazy, smoking like crazy.
And the people you were around too, they were all pretty much doing the same thing.
All party animals. All party animals. Yeah, it was crazy.
Was there any specific moments after all that drug use that you kind of realized like your body's kind of taking a toll from it all?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. There was a time where I had a flat tire on my car, and I'm a little bit mechanical, and so I brought it into. My dad had a big garage at our home. I brought it in the garage. I jacked it up. I took the tire off. I got the spare out of the trunk, and then I couldn't figure out how to put the spare on. I mean, it's just 5 lug nuts, right? But I was sitting there staring at the tire, staring at the hub from the car, and that's when it started hitting me like, dude, what are you doing to your mind? What are you doing to your brain? Like, you can't even, I finally figured it out, flipping it around a few times, and I put it back on. But I was like, that scared me. That scared me, that like I lost that kind of cognitive abilities, and I was like, what are you doing? And so then it was right after that I read that book, Late Great Planet Earth, and I was like, I need a change in my life.
So that was the prompt to reading that book.
Yeah, that led me to read that book, and the book really spoke to my heart about having a personal walk with Jesus. And so, yeah, when I asked him into my heart, I'm not going to say that I heard any trumpets or bolts of lightning or anything like that, but I knew I'd done something right. Like inside my heart, I just knew something was right. And then
like you came home. I
came home. Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like. And then all the other stuff just started falling off my life. Like the drinking, I think was the first thing to go, because I never really enjoyed the taste anyway. I was just drinking to get blinded. And then the harder drugs, the acid, the coke, the speed, all that stuff started going. I really had a hard time quitting pot. And I actually had to humble myself and ask my family to pray for me, and they did. Like I got a big family, and they all got gathered around me. They knew who I was. They knew it's like, oh, it's Ken's a drug addict. So they all laid hands on me and prayed for me, and that was it. Like that was I was able to kick pot after that.
Wow.
Yeah, and then cigarettes I think was the last thing to go.
Wow.
And your family's Catholic?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know they did the laying on of hands. I thought that was...
Well, they were all getting saved on their own. Like my sister had moved to Pennsylvania. My brother, my sister actually was the first one. She connected with Oral Roberts' ministry, which back in like 60s, 70s was really big, and she was getting his books. We used to make fun of her. My mom was a very devout Catholic. Like my mom had a relationship with Jesus. We just had a relationship with religion and the church. And so one of my sisters was the first one to get saved. Then my brother that's closest to me in age got saved. Then my sister out in Pennsylvania got saved. Then I got saved, and then my other brother that's a little bit older than he was the last one. and he got saved too. So all saved. All my sister-in-laws and brother-in-laws are all saved. Yeah. So when I asked them to pray, they were like right on top of it. They did, and that did it.
And that's wonderful. I think that there's a big misconception that a lot of people are, and you know, you're talking about drug use, that people are maybe in that or something similar, that they feel like they have to clean themselves up before trying to have a relationship with Jesus. What would you say to those people?
You know, I think one of the things that ministered to me really, really powerfully, like I got saved, but for 6 months I wasn't going to a church. And I was kind of floundering. And so my brother had been going to an Assembly of God church in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and he invited me to go to that church. And when I walked into that church, and he told me, he goes, "This is not like the Catholic church." He said, people lift their hands, they clap their hands, they sing.
The Pentecostal?
Yeah, it's Pentecostal church. And so when I walked in there, like the love was overwhelming.
Wow.
I mean, I wasn't the nicest character. I had a street edge to me. And I think people probably saw that. And, but rather than being like, who's this guy? And, kind of being scared of me, they were embracing me. They were hugging me every Sunday. And I'll never forget, I used to get high and go to church. I had gone to church. I don't think I was high this Sunday, but I'd gone to church, and I had a pack of Marlboro in my T-shirt pocket. T-shirts back then used to have like a pocket right here over your heart, and I had a pack of Marlboro there. And I just, I went to church with that in there. At the end of the service, they had an altar call, and back then, like everybody used to go to the altar calls, and I went to the altar call, and I was just sitting there, and I was kneeling there praying. And a guy came up to me. He was actually one of the deacons in the church at that time. And he sat down, he knelt down on my left side, and he put his arm around me. And I was just praying, and then he leaned in and he tapped that box of cigarettes like 3 times, and he said, "Jesus is going to take those away from you." And and I was like, yeah, hooray, like, let it happen. So it wasn't like, what are you doing coming in church with those, or it wasn't like, you shouldn't be doing that. There wasn't any condemnation to it. It was just simply, Jesus is going to take that away from you. And so I was like really psyched, like, okay, let's see it happen. And it took a little while. It was probably 6 months after that I went to like a retreat, and I thought, these are all Christian people, and so I put my cigarettes on the dashboard of my car. It was a 3-day retreat, and I went to the retreat, and lo and behold, like half of them were smoking, but I'd left mine in my car anyway, so I'm like, I'm just going to go the weekend. And then when I got back in my car and I saw them there, I was like, I don't need these things anymore.
Wow.
And I just threw them away, and that was it. Jesus did take them away from me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
That's beautiful.
Is that how you end up getting into hiking?
No, hiking's a different story entirely. Is that what you want to go there now?
Well, I did want to ask about that.
No, hiking was a different story entirely, how that all happened. I think it was a midlife crisis.
But it led you to write 3 books or 4 books?
I wrote 4 books.
4 books.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that all the proceeds go to
New Hampshire Search and Rescue.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long ago did you release the first one?
Oh boy. That's got to be maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
I'm going to say like maybe 7 to 8 years ago.
Okay.
Is when the first one came out, and it just started by accident. I got into hiking. I was like 65 pounds heavier than I am right now. I was really in bad shape, and my knees hurt. Everything hurt. And I used to do some deer hunting. I used to like deer hunting.
Nice.
And I'd be out in the woods and deer hunting, and then I'd get cold, so I'd start walking around a little bit. And then I started liking walking around in the woods, and so I started walking around more and more and more and more. And I live right behind Pawtucket Park, right? Pawtucket Park's right over here. And so I started saying, after hunting season's over, I'm just going to start like hiking some of the trails in Pawtucket.
Nice.
So I started hiking like crazy in the wintertime. It was in the wintertime now, and I started snowshoeing, and I was really enjoying it. And just being out in the woods was really pleasant. And I'd lost a few pounds, maybe 5 or 10 pounds. And I thought, I wonder if I could do a 4,000 footer. Now I had done a couple in my drug stage, me and like 3 or 4 other guys, oh my gosh, we were doing drugs and we climbed Mount Washington, we climbed Mount Lafayette, we hiked Mount Lafayette and got to the top and it was a whiteout blizzard. Couldn't even see 100 feet down the trail, which is really sketchy because this is back before they have the gear that they have nowadays. But thank God, it was okay. We made it. It was just like a squall. It blew over. It wasn't like a full-fledged storm. So I had done a couple, and for some reason I just thought, I wonder if I could do a 4,000 footer. And I reached out to Keith Tilton in our church. He was retired and he had been an avid jogger all his life. So I figured, well, he's in shape. And that's how it started. We did our first mountain, Mount Wambach. And I just about died. And so I came home, like I couldn't walk for 3 days afterwards. So I wrote this really long Facebook post, and it was funny. It was just all funny. And people just read it and they were like, that's hilarious. I had so many hits on that story. And then I hiked another one and then another one. And then we started backing off and hiking some smaller ones. Because like I suffered and struggled on every single one of those hikes. It was just brutal. But then after about 16 hikes in the Facebook stories, people were like, you gotta put this in a book. You gotta do a book. And I'm like, I'm not an author. So I just took all the stories and just put them together and made this book. They said it would be fun. I have a copy of it here. So that was the title of the first one. They said it would be fun because it wasn't, and it's really like 6-7-year-old humor. I'm making fun of everything. Yeah. A lot of potty humor, stuff like that. Yeah. Because all the books that are written at this time and even after this time, they're all very serious. They're all like this person died here and this person froze to death there, and people, and that's all the books that are up on the White Mountains. And so my book comes out and people are like, "This is hilarious." We relate to this book because when we hike, we know what it's like to breathe in black flies and to be bitten by mosquitoes and to fall in a river and all this. So they were relating with my style of this is what hiking's like, and so it just took off.
Wow.
Yeah, it became really popular.
That's awesome. Now, would you say your time in nature, is there something spiritual about being up in the mountains?
Yeah, most definitely. I think there's something profound in the economy of God as far as us being able to get into creation and enjoy creation in its natural state. We live in either urban areas or industrialized areas or whatever, and there's always traffic and there's always noise and there's hustle and bustle and and it's not. I don't think it's what God originally designed for us. So, for me, it's very relaxing. I'm a pastor, so I deal with a lot of problems. A lot of people have a lot of problems. So, counseling people and dealing with a lot of problems. So for me, I get out in the woods, there's no problems. The trees aren't getting divorced and the rocks aren't. So I just get out there and it's so rejuvenating and it's so refreshing. Yeah. To just be in God's creation. And then of course, like when you do a 4,000 footer and get up there and look around, it's like, holy smokes. Just beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I haven't done a whole lot of that. I probably should get out in nature more often, but I remember my high school did a 1-week trip to, do you know where Moose River is in Jackman, Maine?
Moose River? I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it's this place really close to the Canadian border. We went whitewater rafting and we had a campsite we stayed at where you can get a view of the river and like a sunrise. And I swear it was like the most incredible place. You're like 90 miles from the nearest town. There's like a gas station 30 minutes down the road, and that's the closest place to your house. And I swear it was like I felt like a changed man after I got home from that.
Yeah,
because it's like there's something about being up there. You got no reception. There's just nothing except like forest, hills, river, and like that's it.
Yeah.
There is definitely something
For
about
sure,
that.
dude. I can relate to that. I mean, I deer hunt as well, especially, I was in SC and now I moved here, but there isn't a piece that I've been able to find like waking up and just seeing the whole world wake up with you.
Yeah.
Being in a stand before, like 4:30 in the morning. There's a certain amount of peace, and I feel so connected to God when I'm sitting there, that before when I started hunting, it was like, okay, I want to kill a deer. I want to, do all that. But then it became into like I just do this because I'm at peace.
Yeah.
Sitting there in the woods and not hearing, you don't hear cars, you don't hear people talking about, the hustle and bustle of life. You just feel
it's awesome.
At ease.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'd imagine that that's what you get when you're hiking up there.
Yeah, and actually it was deer hunting that I first started experiencing that, because you're right. You get there early in the morning and watch the sun come up, and it's the same way. It's like, if you see a deer in New Hampshire, you're fortunate. There's not a lot of them. And I would just bring a thermos of coffee and my Bible and just sit up against a tree and read the Bible and drink coffee and look around, see if there's a deer, and
occasionally shoot something.
Occasionally you might see something.
Go back to reading.
Yeah. But it was fun, and so even just getting at Pawtuckaway Park, like when I started hiking, just again in the woods. I did the 48 4,000 footers, which is you get a patch for it. It's very very few people do that, even though there's a lot more nowadays that are getting into hiking.
Right.
And I did the 52 at a view, which are 52 peaks that are under 4,000 feet. And they all have great views. I've hiked a lot of different areas, but it's not even necessarily about the peaks anymore. It's just being in the woods. I can go out and try to hike a peak and only make it halfway, and that's good enough for me. It's like as long as I've been in the woods and I did a couple thousand feet of elevation gain, and that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into some other stuff, I've got a little gift for you.
Yeah.
It's not much, but hope you like it.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Oh man.
Everybody likes coffee, right? And
yes, sir. Black Rifle coffee.
so that's just their black one, and it's got or just black. And I started drinking that, and it's got like a buttery flavor to it.
Yeah.
So I like that. We've got a.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
let's take it back in.
I'll drink it.
Yeah, for sure.
I love coffee.
I just came on the show. We have this that we'd love for you to sign.
Okay.
This is going to be like the OGs that have signed it. There's Mike and Gabby up there.
Okay. Can I
this
cross
thing.
him out? Just
You had to
way?
you had to press in on the thing. It's a little,
It's going.
yeah, be a little tricky to use.
There you go.
Awesome.
There we
Thank
go.
you so much.
I could be a doctor because nobody can read that.
That's probably one of the best looking signatures on there. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good looking signature.
Yeah, you gotta
Nice.
There were some doctors.
you gotta hold that up.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Never see that thing.
There were some doctors that actually kidnapped somebody once, but nobody could read their ransom request.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So we
It's like legal protection in court. Oh, I didn't prescribe that.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Well, we have your notes right here. Can you read me what it says?
Wow. So you've been the lead pastor at New Life for 33 years, correct?
36.
36.
36 years.
Okay. Wow. That's
Long time.
For a long time.
That's I'm 19, right? So I'm thinking of that in terms of that's way longer than I've been alive.
And Mike actually talked about that on Sunday. He mentioned most pastors leave after 1 to 2 years at most churches.
There's some pastors that move around. There's some denominations that move their pastors around that frequently. Every 3 years, they just keep shuffling the deck.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I think that there's a lot of blessings in longevity. I'm doing weddings for young people that were babies in the church, and that's kind of rewarding to see that.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat to see people's life journeys, for over the long haul.
Yeah. Okay. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine that you've seen some pretty wild stuff. Talking, it could be deliverance. It could be just people that are just totally broken and their lives have been transformed. Is there any specific moments in those 36 years that have really resonated with you?
Oh yeah, there's tons. There's so many. There's one that came to mind. This was at the church in Portsmouth. When I was in Portsmouth, there was a young family that started attending our church. They had a child, and the child had some kind of brain tumor or something. And it was like only 1 year old, maybe a year and a half old. It was just a baby. And the baby was in intensive care unit, the mom called me up and asked me if I could go and visit. And I had 2 little kids at that time too, Janelle and Tim, and so I just went into one of their rooms and stole a stuffed animal. They had plenty, and I went to the hospital, into the intensive care unit, and the baby was like in a tented bed, so it was like tented, and so I gave the little stuffed animal to the mom, and the mom, brought it under the tent and gave it to the little baby. And when she grabbed it, she just got this great big smile. And the mom immediately lost it and just started crying her eyes out. And then she looked at me, she goes, "That's the first time I've seen her smile in almost a year."
Oh my goodness.
And that really, that really broke my heart and yet made me happy at the same time, to think that, wow, just a little gesture like that really helped that little baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, good ones, that was a good one. Bad ones, I was doing jail ministry at the Rockingham County Jail Complex. I was doing a Bible study there every Thursday night for a number of years, and I was working, so I was, kind of like bivocational, I guess. But I had a job. I was working, and I got a call from one of the COs at the jail, and told me that a guy that had been coming to my Bible study, he was a heroin addict, and I can't remember why he was in jail. I don't know if it was distribution of heroin or a breaking and entry or something like that, but he was in jail. And so they contacted me, and they said so he was a heroin addict. His girlfriend was a heroin addict, and when he went to jail, the girlfriend had another heroin addict move in with him, and they had a 2-year-old little daughter. And the other heroin addict, I guess, freaked out, grabbed the little girl by the ankles and swung her against a steam radiator. And basically she died. She died in the hospital. And so they said, he needs to have a release. We don't have the staff. Could you come and pick him up, bring him to the hospital so that he can see his daughter, say goodbye to her, and then bring him back to the jail? And that was tough. Like, I never forgot that, because, we walk in there, there's this beautiful little 2-year-old girl, dead on the bed, and he just sat next to her and started stroking her hair and crying, "My baby, my baby." And I was just like, that's the result of the recklessness of sin and addictions that hit everybody, and take them down paths that they would never normally go down. It's very sad, because when you start going down those paths, you never know how far it's going to take you or what it's going to make you do. And so that was a big thing, So yeah, I mean, I could just go on for after 36 years, there's so many things that have happened. Great testimonies of seeing people get saved. I remember not that long ago, maybe about 8 years ago, this couple came into the church, and they came in between services during our cafe time, and he was on crutches, and the minute I looked at them, I felt like the Holy Spirit tell me they're both going to get saved today. And so I went up to him, I warmed up to him, had a little bit of conversation, and then, they went into church, and I preached and gave an altar call, and sure enough, they both got saved that Sunday. And he became a really good friend of mine, because another friend that I had been a motorcycle buddy, because I ride motorcycles as well.
Nice.
And this guy had been my riding companion for about 14 years. And he called me up one Saturday, and he said, "Hey, you want to go riding?" And I said, "No, I got to stain my deck." And he said, "Okay." So I was staining my deck, and around 3:00 that afternoon, I got a call, and they said, "Hey, Jerry got in a crash. He's at Maine Medical Center. They don't think he's going to make it." And so my wife Darlene and I drove up there really fast, and he had expired before we got there. So that was really hard for me, because he was a very, very good friend. For 14 years, we rode motorcycles together. So this other guy that came in was right after that, and he had a bike too. And so we started riding together, became really good friends. He was a former Green Beret.
Okay.
And we used to go shooting together, and he taught me so much about shooting, and so much. What that guy knew was amazing. Scary, but amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and but that was a good memory. And then he got pancreatic cancer and died a few years back. But yeah.
Yeah, wow, that must have been tough to hear somebody say, "Let's go riding," and then.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, and it was a very sad situation. He never used to wear a helmet. I always wear a helmet. He never used to wear a helmet, and I always used to I used to bug him about that. And a lot of times if he was riding with me, he would wear his helmet because I was kind of a stickler about that. But he wasn't wearing his helmet that day. And that's all it took.
Wow. Yeah. That's one of those moments, though, right? But they're in a better place.
Oh, yeah. He knew the Lord. He loved the Lord. He's in a much better place right now. Yeah. I'll see him again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
I know one of the things that you do, you don't just give sermons. I know that as a pastor, you also do a lot of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I imagine one of the most common issues that come up is grief. I know you talked a lot about losing people close to you and how difficult that's been.
Mm-hmm.
How do you counsel people through the loss of a loved one?
Yeah, that's so when I approach it, I kind of have like a multi-prong approach because I do know coaching and I'm trained as a coach. So I might use some coaching, but then again, I'm a pastor, so I want to be able to give them input. Like in coaching, you don't give the client input.
Right.
You just draw out of them. But there are times where I'll give them input as a pastor and, encourage them, give them some scriptures to think about and pray about, let them know, especially if the person was a person of faith, let them know that they're home. It's our loss and it's our grief, but they're home and they're in a much better place. And, the Bible talks about the comfort of the Holy Spirit that surpasses any kind of earthly or human comfort. And I think that's where people can draw their strength to move on. I'll see him again. And that's the attitude that they should have too. The tough ones are when a person didn't have any kind of faith.
How do you deal with that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's just really no easy way of doing that. In my services, I'll usually, like if somebody asks me to do a funeral service and I don't know them, maybe they're people from the town, but they want a pastor and something, so I'll get called from the funeral homes. Can you do the service? And I'll be like, yeah. I'll meet with the family. I'll try to get as much information as I can. But if they were not people of faith at all, the way I word it is I just say that, hey, God gave so-and-so life. It was a gift that God gave to them, and now they have returned to God, and which they have. They returned to God. Now, what he does with them at that point is, between him and them. I really can't, I don't have anything to say on that. I really can't judge. But chances are there's a lot of people I think that have probably gone to hell. It is what it is, and it's tough. I try not, I don't tell the family that. I don't say, okay, your granddad's in hell. That wouldn't be nice.
Yeah.
But I try to give them comfort, and I also use those opportunities to present the gospel to everybody that's there. I was doing, this is an amazing story. This is one of the good stories. You were asking me about stories.
Nice.
I got invited to go do a funeral in Lynn, Massachusetts. And, so there's a little saying, Lynn, city of sin. It's not a nice place.
Well, I mean, it's outside Boston, so.
Yeah. So I went to do this service, and this person came with me, and we brought a case of Bibles, of New Testaments. We brought a whole case of New Testaments. And I got in there, and they were all like criminals. I mean, they were all like bikers, just scary looking
Hell's
people.
Angels types of guys?
Yeah, like scary looking people, just scary looking. Like you wouldn't want to meet them on a street somewhere. But this was a funeral home. And I got up there to do this service against somebody I really didn't know. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit said, give him a double barrel broadside. In other words, so like that's how the Holy Spirit speaks to me. Give him a double barrel broadside. In other words, don't hold back. Like hit him with the gospel as hard as you know how. And so I did. I just this is the gospel, and I just preached hard. No Jesus, you're going to hell. Jesus, you're going to heaven. There's no other options. There's no other solutions. It's either A or B. You got to make a decision now. And then I gave an altar call, which I never do at funerals for the most part. I gave an altar call, and 11 people raised their hand to accept Jesus. And these are nasty looking people. 11 people raised their hands. And I mean, as soon as I started preaching, there was one woman that she cried the whole time. She was just bawling her eyes out the whole time. And I could tell the Holy Spirit was really working on her. And then when we were done, we opened up that case of Bibles, and they all went. I can't remember if it's like 30 Bibles in the case or something, but people took them, and so that was a good memory. It's like, wow, that was really the God moment. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow. There's people that are maybe have some family members, or they have friends or anybody close to them, and they want to spread the message of Christ. What is the best way in all of your years of experience that they can go about that, to sharing the message in a hostile, potentially a hostile setting?
Well, I think one aspect of that is definitely your own personal testimony. They overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. So being bold, that's the loving not your life unto death. Being bold, sharing your own personal testimony. You can argue with a person that has an argument. You can't argue with a person that has a testimony. It's their testimony. You can't argue it. You either accept it or you don't accept it. The other way that I really kind of have fallen into as far as presenting the gospel is the story of the prodigal son. I love that story for this main reason, and this is where I think everyone can relate to the story of the prodigal son, is that he's the youngest son. He's asking for his inheritance before his dad is even dead, which is like, not only is it unheard of, but it's very rude. It's very rude.
The way you put it in a sermon is, he's telling his dad, "You're dead to me. I only want what you can give me. I don't want you."
Exactly. He's just saying, I want everything you can give me right now. I want my inheritance now, and I'm going to do my own thing. And then I roll that back on humanity. We want what our Father gives us. He gives us life. He gives us health if we're blessed enough to have good health. He gives us, our brains and our bodies to do whatever work we do and make our he gives us everything that we have, the heart that's beating inside of us, the lungs that's breathing. He gives us everything. And we say, I want everything you have for me. I just don't want you. I don't love you, and I don't believe in you, and I don't want you in my life. And so we're all, in that sense, the prodigal son. And then when it comes to enough situations in his life where he has that aha moment when he's in the pig pen and he says, I'm going to go back to my dad. And that's what happens to us when situations line up just right, or when it finally clicks and we say, I want God in my life, and then we're saved, we're welcomed. The Father elevated him right back to sonship. Gave him everything again, and that's what God does for us. He elevates us to sonship. We who were rebels, and it's an amazing. So that's kind of like a good story, because I think a lot of people have heard some of these more common Bible stories, like the prodigal son. They've heard it, but they haven't heard it in the way that all of us are that prodigal son or prodigal daughter. We want God. We want the things of God. Life, creation, this planet, the wonderful things we enjoy, sunshine, the beach, whatever it might be, we just don't want him. And that points the finger that we're all guilty, in that sense.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the response that God gives. Because it also, there's kind of two sides to that coin. On the one hand, it exposes humanity's attitude towards God. But on the other hand, it also exposes our attitude towards ourselves, where we think, well, I'm not going to make it. I'm not good enough. Right. God's not going to accept me.
Right.
And you even hear people saying that to other people as well. Well, what makes you think God would accept you after everything you did?
Right.
And that's the other part I love about it, is that he comes home, and rather than giving him this big whooping, saying, what have you been doing for the past year or 5 years, however long it was, he just embraced him with open arms.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another part of that story that's amazing too, is the Bible says that when the father saw him far off, he got up and ran towards him. And there's a lot of theologians that believe that because the son was coming back towards the gate of the city, there's a law in the Old Testament that if you had a rebellious, disrespectful son, the elders would stone him at the gate of the city. And so their belief is that the father was rushing towards him to stay the judgment that would have come upon him. And to think that, God rushes towards us to stay the judgment of hell that each and every one of us deserve. And it falls on Jesus, and the Father embraces us. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that me personally, when I'm trying to to talk to people about Christ that for whatever reason, some of the people that have seemed guarded up the most is they've been brought up in this religion, but they don't know relationship. And what, in your words, what would you say is like the biggest difference there, and how important not having either of those is in your life?
Yeah, like relationship. I'm not sure I understand your question. So what's important about having a relationship?
Yeah, so like the importance of religion and then not having a relationship personally.
Right.
So like maybe that could look like just attending church Sunday, but you don't have a relationship with Christ.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that think a relationship with religion, even if it's Christianity, equals a relationship with Jesus, and it doesn't. It doesn't. You can go to church on Sunday, and that alone that doesn't save you. I mean, that's not the same as having a relationship with the person of Jesus. So to cross that bridge, it really has to be a heartfelt thing. It has to be something in the heart where your heart wants to know God, wants to be in a relationship with Him. When you sense His approval and love towards you, I think that girds up everything else that's going on inside of you. The Bible says that the Spirit of God has been poured in our hearts, in our heart, by which we cry, Abba, Father, which is like Daddy. And so God doesn't become this mean Wizard of Oz type figure,
Taskmaster.
Taskmaster with lightning bolts ready to, ready to get you. But he becomes your papa. And so it's so much more. It's more of a romance. It's more of a love story that, we fall in love with God because He already loves us. I mean, that's a given. Like, God already loves everybody. And it's just a matter of that we are reciprocating to that love. And that's what starts a relationship. Like, when I was dating Darlene, we started off as friends and then fell in love. But it took both of us to fall in love with each other. If I had fallen in love with her, head over heels or whatever, but she wasn't with me, then that's not a relationship. It's certainly not a marital relationship. So it took both parties to be in love. And it's the same thing with a relationship with God. It takes both parties to be in love. God's in love with you, but if you're not in love with Him, even if you're going to church, it's still not the same thing. That commitment of asking Jesus into your heart. What does that mean? It means that He's the lover of your heart, your soul. He knows. This blows me away. Like, He knows everything about me, things that I wouldn't want anyone else to ever know in a million years. He knows, and He still loves me. Wow, that's amazing to me. That's amazing. That's a true lover right there. And so, a relationship is what it's all about.
Do you think that's why God gives us free will?
Yes. Yeah, He could have made us robots. He could have made us robots that just, walk around saying, I love you. But it's not a gift. Like, I have free will to do with what I want, and I can literally damn myself to hell, and God will allow me to do that. That's how much He loves me. He'll let me use my free will to destroy myself if that's what I'm hell-bent on doing. But when I turn that free will towards Him, and I say, I want you, I love you, and I want more of you, and I keep, and this is what the call of Jesus is, a profound call, because it's follow me, follow me. So that's not like a just hang out with me once, it's continually following me. And so that means that's a lifelong call. That's not follow me for 5 years until you know the Bible inside out and you're on your own. That's follow me from now until you are in my kingdom in heaven. And so it never stops. And I think that's what Paul refers to when he talks about fighting the good fight of faith. I'm following Jesus, and I have to fight that fight, run that race until the finish line.
Okay.
It's not how you begin, it's how you end. Right?
Yeah.
And so I want to end strong.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I was going to ask as well, you brought up love earlier. I know that a lot of times culture kind of has a perverted idea of love. Biblically, what does real, genuine love look like?
I think when you look at the Greek words, agape love means an unconditional love. And I think that is true love. You have phileo love, which is relationship. Like, we're friends, and that's where the Greek word comes from, friends. You have eros love, which is erotic love, and that's a sexual, romantic type love. But then agape love is an unconditional love, which basically, at its foundation, is a choice. I'm choosing. Like when I chose Darlene, I chose her over a billion other women on the planet. Like there's I don't believe like there's one mate for one person. Like some people say I'm looking for my soulmate. No, I could have married hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women and made it work on my part. I wanted to know that I was marrying a woman of God that would understand what true love is, because what it is, it's a choice that is a commitment. So like I'm committed to my marital love with Darlene, whether we're seeing eye to eye, whether we're in a good time or a bad time. She is my wife and I'm committed to her. Nothing will change that. So it's the same kind of love God has to us. He's committed to us. This is what's freeing between the relationship versus religion. Religion is I'm okay as long as I'm doing okay. Where the relationship is I'm okay because he's committed to loving me. He's never going to stop loving me. That doesn't give me a license to sin. If anything, that gives me a desire that I don't want to sin, even though in my flesh there's always this negative pull to want to make me sin and to sin. But God is not moved by that. He has already committed himself to love me, and especially when I put my faith in him and I say I'm going to love you too. I'm committed to you like you're committed to me. That's where I think the rubber meets the road. And that's the difference between like the religion and the relationship. Religion is like, I'm committed, maybe, if things are okay, I'm committed. And I see this even in the church I pastor. There's a lot of people that live that walk of faith, that they're really not committed. And then when something happens bad in their lives fall apart. They blow apart in a million different pieces. And sometimes they leave the church, they backslide, whatever, because they were never committed. Like I think of the words of Job in the Bible, right? Though he slay me, yet will I praise him. So it's like, God, I'm your creation, and you have the right to do with me whatever you want. And whatever you do with me, I choose to love you. And he looks at me and says, I want you to live as good as you can, but even when you screw it up, I still love you. And that's why, like, how can you not, that's a win-win situation, really.
Wow.
It's really what makes Christianity different than the other religion.
All the world religions, all of them, bar none, all of them are based on an element of works. They always have things that you're supposed to do to toe the line. And in Christianity, it's a hard thing. It's like, the Bible says all things are lawful to me, but not all things are profitable. And what does that mean? Does that mean that I can sin? Well, it's like, yeah, you can, but you're going to be miserable. It's not going to serve you. It's going to destroy parts of your life. And so the healthier and the cleaner you live, the more you're going to enjoy the life that God's given you. And then there's always forgiveness, and he's committed to us. It's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. You had mentioned when there is that relationship that it's not a free ticket to sin, but it's almost like you want to change now. And from when I didn't have a relationship with Christ, I didn't fully understand that. And I asked the question earlier that people feel like they have to clean themselves up before they come to Christ. But when you do find Christ and you find a relationship that it's not like, I have to now. It's, man, I don't want to do this stuff that's causing me to lead this life that I don't want to live.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I mean, there's so many, the reason we started this show is there's so many young men like me and John's age right now that have just been led to be confused about everything, and that their past now is like, you don't have to fix yourself up, man. Like, God wants you to just come as you are, and build a relationship. And then to me, that's when my life changed as well.
Yeah. Yeah, people talk about, like, the grace of God, and it's a wonderful thing. God just, his unmerited grace, he just loves us. And I've heard people say, well, if that's all you talk about is grace, you're giving people a license to sin. And it's like, they've already got a license to sin. It's called free will. They don't need a license to sin. They need something that's a higher calling, a higher purpose in life, and that is living the life that God wants you to live. And when people discover that, then they're on the right track. They're gonna first of all, they're gonna love God with everything that's in their heart. They're gonna be committed to him. That's that agape relationship. I'm committed. It's a commitment. It has nothing to do with emotion. I think American love is all based on emotion, and it's so sad because everyone ends up in divorce because emotions change. Where a commitment, a choice, is, no, I'm going to love you no matter, like the vows. Literally, the vows are there for a reason, through sickness, through health, through rich or for poor. It doesn't matter. I'm choosing to love you from the day one of us dies. And so I think that we find our purpose when we see life unfolding before us. Things are awakened in us. So I'll give you a great example, and maybe this will translate to, like, you're trying to reach younger men, right? You're trying to reach younger men that are kind of like confused about life. This is something I saw that really shook me to the core and resonated to me, because God creates men for a specific reason. We are the defenders. We are to defend our wives with our lives, our children with our lives, our community with our lives, and our country, if our country is a godly country, with our lives. And so the little Ukrainian girl that was stabbed recently, I'm sure you saw the videos, were horrific.
Yeah.
She was like, what, 23?
Something like that.
Early 20s,
yeah.
early 20s. And the still photo right after she took the stab to the neck, there's a still photo where she kind of, probably unknowingly goes right into a fetal position. Her knees are right up here, and her hands are over her mouth, and she's looking up because she knows she just got stuck, and she just looks up like that, and the look on her face,
yeah, I saw it,
is a look of confusion and panic. And when I see something like that, the God-given manly, masculine desire to be a protector of the weak rises up inside of me, and I'm like, how could no one have intervened? I don't think they could have saved her, because if her carotid artery was severed, she probably would have bled out anyway. But to immediately, like, tackle somebody to the ground, or to begin to render first aid, and nobody did that.
People got up and walked away.
She at least
look,
somebody
I saw
there.
the full video, including what happened after. There were people that looked over, saw what was happening. Couple minutes after the fact, they saw her go down, and they just started getting up and walking away.
It's so sad. Yeah. It's so sad. So the masculine gifting of God is to be that protector, and I think that we need that in our society.
Yes.
But it's crazy. Our society's backwards right now. It's kind of wired backwards, where women, I remember women's lib back in the late 60s. Women's liberation, and we don't need men to be chauvinistic towards us. We don't need them to open our doors. We don't need, and that started like messing with the wiring of men's minds. Like, what do women want? And so it got kind of messed up. But I think that that's an honorable thing. To treat women with respect, with honor, open the doors for them. And it's just basic courtesy as well. It should become culture again, because I think it's a God ordained type of strength defending weakness.
They're just trying to confuse us. I mean, we look at some of the comments that we're getting, and it is a blessing that they are seeing it, even if they're gonna say some, it doesn't affect us, but it does affect us in a way that, like, man, hopefully you see another video and hopefully it helps you out a bit. But it's so, people have been led to be so confused, not just men too, I mean women too. I mean, look at our generation. But so you would say that that's what gives men like a real purpose, is to be that protector, to be, I mean, I really appreciate you saying that, because that's one of the things that, I mean, that could be a whole 50-hour video itself on, like, that is what's lost, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you think is kind of one of the some of the biggest things in culture that are causing men to shy away from that role today, or at least things that kind of break men down and get them into the state where they can't step into that role?
So, so when you back up into like the late 50s, you had the sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture led to promiscuous lifestyles where people were just sleeping with anybody and everybody at drop of a hat. And that began to undermine the value of commitment in a relationship, in a sexual relationship, and in a marital relationship. There's a reason that sex outside of marriage is wrong. Because usually people who live together before they get married have a higher level of divorce than those people who get married and then start living together. And so God's systems works. But I think the promiscuous lifestyle gave birth to the women's movement, that, you don't have to be the little housewife that stays at home with an apron and baking pies and raising kids. You can go out and become a career woman. You can have a good income. You can be the successful businesswoman. And so women started rising up and doing that, saying, we don't need men. Now, some of that was because men were treating them badly because they were just sleeping with them all the time and then discarding them. And so
there was obviously some good reason for the movement. There was
absolutely. Like equal pay. I think women should get equal pay because they bring things to the workforce that like men don't, and a lot of them highly educated can do a lot of great things, and so equal pay, I 100% agree with that. But I think that the women's movement started feeding into the culture of death, of abortion on demand, which is a whole nother problem. And so I think everybody kind of lost their way. Like they lost what is a family unit, what is the purpose of a family unit, what is the benefit of a God-ordained family unit, one husband, one wife, one lifetime, and I should say one born husband, one born wife for a lifestyle, none of the transgender confusion in there. That men, so get back to the original question, so you have women starting to assert their rights more and more and more and more. Some of that was good, some of that was not good, to where they started sending a signal like, we don't want strong men. And if you notice, like the rock and roll, so like, I'm an old rock and roller all the way back to like the Beatles. But then by the time you get to the 70s and 80s, the rock and roll performers are all starting to become more effeminate. They're letting their hair grow really, really, really long. They're starting to wear makeup and
the sparkly outfits,
tight pants, leather pants.
And you're like, okay,
era.
What's
bulging,
the deal? But it was kind of this thing where women were like, we don't want the big, tough, masculine, macho guy. We want somebody that's going to be loving and concerning and caring. And so roles started getting changed, and then I think that fed right into transgenderism as well. So you see this progressive slide away from. When we get away from God, we get away from God's creative order.
Right.
And so that's where we are right now. We're pretty far from God's creative order.
And then we have I think one of the biggest things, the availability of porn has made it 10 times worse, because you talked about commitment earlier, where it's almost like micro cheating. It's like it's so destructive. And I think there's a statistic that I saw. It's like between 70 and 75% of men consume porn in some capacity regularly, and that's the same for both inside and outside the church.
Yeah, I think it's higher than that. Well, I think it's in the 90s.
What do you think that does to a healthy marriage when a spouse can get mingled in with that type of stuff?
It's unfair. It's unfair to the other person because you're looking for certain things that you want to see. And sometimes it's just the differences. Like I heard the statement once, which is really true. It's a woman wants one guy to do 1,000 things, where a guy wants 1,000 women to do one thing. And so that's that sexual appetite that's, probably higher in men than in women. And so porn allows a guy to have multiple different fantasy relationships because they're just images or videos or whatever. And it's unfair to the wife. She can't fulfill all those different roles. She can't be a blonde and a brunette and a redhead or, whatever, She is who she is, and she needs to be valued and loved for who she is alone. And so I think porn destroys that. It destroys that. And the longer a man is connected to porn, the harder it is for him to really connect and relate to his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would ruin everything.
It does.
The worst part is how available it is now. Like,
it's crazy.
I think anything that people carry in their pockets every day.
I think I was exposed to it when I was like 9.
Yeah.
From an ad. I don't know. YouTube and social media apps are supposed to take these ads down, but sometimes they don't. And I think I literally saw one. I don't quite remember. It was a long time ago, but I think I saw one when I was like 9. That is, I think, the average age that men are getting exposed now.
It is
getting younger and younger. I think it's about 9 years old.
Yeah, 8 and 9. Boys 8 and 9 are being exposed to it because it's on every electronic device.
Yeah, and even if you're not looking for it, which most of the time they're not, they're kids. But it's everywhere. It finds you. You don't have to find it.
Your
social medias, man. You don't even have to be. I mean, you could be playing video games, and then somebody can send it even through that chat on like a PS5 or something, man. Like, it's so widely available, and it's such an attack on people. And the effects of reason why our young men are so confused. I think that's one of the biggest culprits. And
it's so horrible to women too, because they're growing up in a world where men are hyper sexualized, and you just think about what it does to relationships. Why do we have like crimes going through the roof? It's people are messed up. My question is, I was going to ask this earlier when we were talking about coaching. I know you've done a lot of coaching. I'm sure there's a lot of addiction counseling, really for addiction in general. I know you, with drugs and stuff like that, you've had experience yourself dealing with those types of things. There are a lot of people that just have no desire to quit. They're just going all in. But there are also a lot of people that they're in this rough spot where they want to get out of it. They realize the dangers of what they're doing. Kind of like the situation you were in when the doctor said to your friend, you're not going to make it to 30. There are a lot of people that have that wake up call and they want to get off of it, but it's just an endless struggle. It feels like. Yeah. What advice do you give to people that are coming to you with an addiction that they're trying to break out of, or any kind of like sin cycle?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, because I think there's multiple tiers to addiction. One tier can be demonic oppression. So it literally could be a spirit. We've done deliverances at our church. I've been doing deliverances for over 40 years. I was doing them back in Portsmouth with another guy back then, years ago. So it can have a spiritual content as far as a demonic oppression. That needs to be broken off. I think when I was talking earlier about my smoking dope, and I couldn't, it's funny, like everything else just fell off like leaves in the fall, but that like would not. And it wasn't until I humbled myself and asked other people to pray for me. I think that's the power of, in the book of James, where he said, confess your faults one to another and pray that you be healed. I think there's something about sharing our struggles and getting help and encouragement from other people. So there's the demonic thing that needs to be broken. There is the deepening of your walk with the Lord, which so recently there's an organization out there called Light University, and they offer correspondence courses on all kinds of different things. A lot of it is around mental health, counseling, coaching. And so as a coach already, they had a course on mental health coaching. So I took the course on mental health coaching, and it was a lot of work. And I got certified. And then they said you can bump that certification up to a master's certification if you take like 2 more tiers of. So I had to choose. They're like, you choose what you want to do. And one was working with the elderly, one was working with married couples, one was working with, I don't even remember, there's different things, but one was on life recovery. And I thought, ooh, that's good. I'm going to do that one. Well, it turned out that it was basically about the 12 steps. So the 12 steps, when they originally started, was a Christian program. It was taken from the Beatitude, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, and the book of James. And these men back in the early 1900s put this course together, and it started becoming very successful and very popular. Over the years, it got watered down as more and more people started coming to it, but didn't like the Christian element. So they took away the Jesus factor, and they just said, your higher power. Your higher power can be anything. Your higher power can be nature. Your higher power can be your wife. And so, yeah, so they really,
guys.
What's that?
It is for a lot of guys.
Yeah, no doubt. So anyway, so when I did the course, I did one course on the 12 steps and then one course on the laws of the 12 steps. And I like what they call it. They don't call it like AA, which is usually Alcoholics Anonymous. They call it life recovery, because it doesn't matter whether it's drugs, whether it's porn, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's gambling, whether it's lying, whether it's overeating, any part of your life that has become crazy and uncontrollable, the 12 steps is geared for that. And as I looked at the historical proof of the 12 steps and the rate of recovery for people who go through the 12 steps and the biblical foundation of the 12 steps, I was like, this is gold. So that's why starting in January, we're going to start 12 steps at the church. We're going to have a men's group and a women's group. We're going to start 12 steps for anybody. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It can be anything. Somebody's gambling too much, and they're going through their paycheck and they don't know why. It's out of control. And 12 steps, when you walk through the steps, just begins to bring God back into the center of your life.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you're comfortable with spoilers, but would you mind sharing what those 12 steps are?
That's if I can remember them. I know that the first step was all about awareness.
Right.
You have to have awareness of the problem. I don't know if I'm going to get them in order or even half of them, but so the awareness was one of the big ones. Transparency was another one. You've got to become real with yourself. You've just got to humble yourself and say, I'm out of control. Kind of like the prodigal son. I'm in a pig pen. It can't get any worse than this. And so you got to hit rock bottom. You have to have, so the transparency, the total honesty, you have to do a very, very strict evaluation of your life and be brutally honest, evaluating every aspect of your life, where you are, why are you there, what pride issues are at work, all that kind of stuff. You have to admit that you are out of control, which is hard for some people to do. A lot of people go to drug clinics at a hospital because it's 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, and they'll even tell you, I'm just going to get it under control. They're not saying I want to stop, I want to get out of it. They just want to be, and you can't. It's like a wild bull.
Yeah, if I could just shoot up heroin once a week, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
If I could get it down to weekly injections instead of daily, I'll
that's fine. Then I'm good to go.
Yeah.
So that's one of the steps, is to have that honest evaluation that your life is out of control. Then to look at God. Seriously look at God's help and cry out to Him. Basically, it's an act of surrender. It's a deeper level of surrender. You have to surrender control. Then there's making another list of anybody or everybody that you might have hurt or offended in your life, and that takes time. Because I know, when I started doing it, even a month later, I was thinking about, that person I kind of, you start seeing all this stuff, and the Holy Spirit starts bringing all this, that's pretty, minute. But the Holy Spirit's no, it's a thing. And so then you have to make amends to all of those people. You have to start calling up. You have to start humbling yourself. You start asking people to forgive you for whatever you might have done. And in some cases, if it means making restitution, you have to make restitution. And then, so that's, I know there's a couple more in there too. I know there's a couple more in there, a life plan. Attending groups is really powerful. Having an accountability partner is all part of that also. So that's kind of the process. I mean, literally, even if a person just wanted to break through into a deeper dimension of their walk with Jesus, the 12 steps would be perfect for that. Wow. Because it gets to the emptiness of you, the end of you, and the beginning of God. And that in itself is, I'd go through the 12 steps just for that. It just deepens your walk, and it just, it creates more dependency from you on him to help. And yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Good stuff.
We do have some questions written down that I think a lot of people might want answered, and I think that you have a perfect perspective on everything.
Yeah,
we'll see.
So the first one was, why are so many pastors caught in scandals?
Ties into what we're saying, especially around sexual sin, but really just money, finances. It's like every week we hear about another pastor getting exposed. Even Pastor Mike talked about, what was his name?
He said like Benny Hinn.
Benny Hinn got exposed for something.
There was another one started a big movement in some other country. Oh, gosh, what was his name? He talked about it at service.
I don't remember.
Oh, Coco. The guy's last name was Coco.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I remember that because I thought of hot chocolate.
Yes.
So why do you think it seems to be, in every industry, people get exposed with scandals, CEOs and politicians, but there does seem to be something unique about pastors, and especially mega churches. It seems like the larger the church is, even Hillsong, they had an issue with that.
Yeah.
I think there was sexual abuse going on, and that was like one of the largest churches in the world. So why do you think this happens so often with pastors getting involved in scandals?
There's a multi-tiered problem going on here. The MO of the enemy is strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. So obviously there's a higher level of spiritual warfare. You got a bigger bullseye on your back, and the enemy knows that, and the enemy is going to go after you. That's one right there. That's probably a big one. The enemy is going to go after people in leadership.
Like temptations,
and sometimes it's a slow thing. He's got all kinds of time. He's not in a rush, So the other thing is, they'll tell you that in the ministry, the 3 G's: gold, glory, and girls. So you're either going to fall for the gold, which means you're going to start embezzling, or you're going to start doing something dishonest with your finances, or you're going to go for the glory. You're going to get so big, or something's going to happen that you're actually going to begin to think it's you rather than God doing things. And then the girls are always there. Guys are sight-oriented and girls are pretty, and let's face it. And so there's a big temptation with any one of those 3. So those are like the 3 main ways that the enemy is going to go after you. The reason that the reason that it becomes an open game is because there's a lot of stress in the ministry. And so it's very easy to work very hard. I tend to be a workaholic, which is stupid. But I just tend to be a workaholic. And so getting overworked, not taking enough rests and vacations, and staying, physically, mentally, emotionally, keeping your reserves filled, that puts you in a weakened state, lack of sleep. There's a lot of stress in the ministry as well. There's either the stress of performing, like, I only got a church of 25 people, I must be a loser. Everybody's got different gifts. Some people can grow a mega church. Some people can't. And so
some people could start a podcast.
There you go.
Nice.
You can. And so, you can do a lot of things, and God's given, God gave gifts. Like, you've heard my testimony where I was raised in a home. My parents were not very loving, not affectionate, very critical. And so I just literally grew up believing I was stupid. I just literally thought I was stupid. And then after I got saved, it really wasn't until after I got saved that I started seeing like all this gifting. I can work with my hands. I can play music and write songs. I can write books. I didn't even thought I could be an author and write books. I can hike mountains. There's so much in there that's like starting to come out. But I also have to keep in perspective that they're God's gifts. There's God. That's why I want to use them for God's glory. The first book, I really don't talk a lot about my faith, a little bit, very little. But then in the second, third, and fourth book, the last chapter of each book is a gospel presentation. I mean, it's just a little sermon in a chapter. And I've done that just to say that, I'm not just writing books about hiking because I like hiking, I do, but I'm also using it as a vehicle to reach people who may never hear the gospel in any other format. And so they can hear it in that format. And so I think when you put all those together, when you put the fact that it's very stressful, sometimes the hours are really crazy. Like there's times where it's laid back, it's not crazy, and then there's times where like it just blows up. You got weddings, you got funerals, you've got things going on, you've got crisis in the church, and then it becomes very, it becomes very like emotionally grating, and you get all keyed up. Adrenaline, like how am I going to solve these things? Because you do solve a million problems. Put on top of that the enemy's gunning for you, and you've got naturally inclined weaknesses, and people fall. And people fail.
Wow. And to tie into that, on the other side of that, do you think that, and I'm not just talking about New Life in general, I'm just saying as a whole, do you think that pastors have a place that they can go to other people when they're struggling, the same way that people go to them? Or is it like I have to be perfect and I can't be seen falling?
Yeah, so like in the Assemblies of God, which I'm a pastor in the Assemblies of God, like if I went to my higher ups and said I've got a really big problem with porn, they'd probably pull my license.
Really?
So that's why a lot of guys don't fess up and get help that they need to get. So that's something that really needs to be changed.
It's very hypocritical.
We need to make help of, the Bible says encourage one another. You who are spiritual, restore those who have fallen. And so like they say, the church is the only army that shoots its wounded. Somebody gets wounded it's warfare, right? It's a spiritual warfare. And in warfare, there's always collateral damage, and people get taken out. And so somebody gets taken out, a leadership position, and the first thing we want to do is just get rid of them, like out the door they go. And I think that's not restorative, and God wants us to be restorative. So there's that. Pastors live very lonely lives in the sense that no one really. There's similarities to pastors and first responders, and combat veterans. Nobody knows what a police officer goes through, really, except another police officer. Nobody knows a combat situation other than other combat veterans. I don't care how much TV we watch. Nobody really knows the ministry unless it's another person in ministry. Then you really get it. But there's that stigma in all of these professions. There's that stigma of, I don't want to look like a loser. So nobody wants to say like I'm losing control here. I'm in trouble and say I need help. And that's wrong. One of the things that I did, so our district is Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. It's called the Northern New England District, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. I used to be a presbyter for 7 years, and I had like 22 churches that were like under me. One of the things, I'm not anymore, I haven't been for a long time, but one of the things with my coaching is that nobody from the higher ups gets in touch with the guys in the field to see how they're doing. And so I trained 12 other coaches in our district. And then we raised up a care ministry where we just started calling all the other credential holders just to say, hey, how you doing? Means a lot. It's just like I've been in ministry for 36 years. In 36 years, no one has ever called me to see how I was doing. So that's tough. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you've got something going on here. We had a big scandal years ago in the church that was, it made the news from Boston to Portland. It was big. Mm-hmm. And no one was like really there to like help me walk through that. So that's tough. So what we do is we just call, we just did the first round. I'm on vacation right now, but when I get back to work, I'm going to be getting the people who made all the phone calls together and kind of like we did a beta test, and we're going to say, how did it go? What can we do better? And then we're just going to keep doing that, like maybe twice a year, just calling all the credential holders, to where after a while, they'll expect it. They'll expect a call like, hey, we're just checking up on you. How you doing? We're not district officials. We're not presbyters. We're not going to, pull your license from you if you say you're, having a hard time. We're just here to pray for you and help you. Plus, we're coaches. So if somebody says that, there is something going on, we can immediately slide right into a coaching role and begin to coach them and help them out.
So you think a lot of it is caused by the fact that when somebody in ministry is struggling with something, because like you said, you alluded to earlier, when you have the target on your back, the devil's taking his time to take that shot. He's going to make sure he's got a really clean shot. So when somebody, I think what you were alluding to earlier is when a pastor or a priest or somebody in ministry who's kind of high up is struggling with something, some kind of a temptation, somewhat of a seed that's growing in them that they want to get rid of. They feel like they don't have anybody to talk to, and they kind of have this standard of perfection that they have to embody. And then eventually, once that thing, whatever that is growing inside them for months, maybe even years, and then eventually they end up doing something horrible. They end up acting out on it. And so you think that a lot of the church scandals could be relieved if there was a place for pastors or people high up in ministry to go?
I think there's an aspect of it that can be. Like if you just have somebody to talk to, if you just have somebody to talk to that no matter what you tell them, they're going to still, I do this when I'm coaching. So if I'm coaching a client, there's one of the disciplines of coaching is what's called a coaching presence. And that means that I'm listening to somebody at what we call level 3 listening. I'm listening to more than what they're saying. I'm listening to what they're not saying. I'm listening to emotion. I'm listening to body language. And that takes a lot of energy to actually show up like that for that person. And so to show up for another human being, the only way you can do that is to remind yourself that there's an intrinsic value in that person as being created in the image of God. So sometimes there's clients that come in and, like the first thing I'm thinking is like, oh man, like why? It's like, no, like they're created, they've got giftings. They're God's creation, so they have an intrinsic value and they deserve my 100% best. If we could get that in the church, that would be great. That we would stop being judgmental. And in my ministry, I really try to promote that. Like, there's no room for judgment. And that's, as I'm coaching, we tell people, I don't care why you are where you are, or even, what brings you here. I just care that you want to move forward. And let's talk about that. How are we going to help you move forward? So there's a no judgment rule. I don't care what anybody dumps on my lap. There's a no judgment rule. It's like, okay, where do you want to go? And this kind of ties right in with the 12 steps. A lot of times I'll use some of the 12 steps as I'm coaching people forward. So I think there are things that people can do though. So like when it comes to the 3 G's, the gold, the glory, the girls. So when it comes to the gold, you can put in to place checks and balances. So our finances are available to any member. Any member at any time can go to the church office and say, can I see last month's report? Boom, here it is. Everything is brought together once a year at an annual meeting, and there's all the stuff there. And then the other thing that I learned from my pastor, which has been invaluable, is that every 3 years we get an outside, independent resource to come in and not do an audit, because that's really expensive and takes a lot of time, but a review. So they come in and it takes them about a month to 6 weeks to go through all of our books for the last 3 years, and they do a review to see if our business practices are above board and if there's anything that could be considered scandalous, even if it's not, if it could be,
Even perceived
that way, right? So that's something that we've put into place to be accountable for every nickel and every dime in ministry, and that keeps somebody from wanting to cook the books and steal $100,000 or whatever. The glory is, I purposely always tell people, don't look up at me, don't put me on a pedestal. You know what I mean? I'm just a messenger. That's all pastors are. They're just tools in the hands of God's. So keep your eyes firmly fixed on Jesus. There's some pastors that like that, the accolades, and they really stoke that fire. Not healthy. The girl thing I mean, unfortunately, the porn aspect is a porndemic. It's out of control. There's no checks and balances you can put on that because it's on your phone. It's on your. It's everywhere. But as far as actually falling with a girl or failing with a girl, there are things you can do. Like I will not meet. I will not counsel or coach a woman alone ever. Somebody else is in the building. So it's usually during business hours. If it's not during business hours, my wife will come in and she'll be in another office. We've put windows in all of the doors. Those were all solid wood doors, and we put windows in all of them just so that there's not a closed door and I can't see. And that's just wise for me and the other person, because it doesn't even take an actual adulterous affair. It just takes the accusation,
Right.
and you're done.
Right.
You know, I mean, like if somebody accused me, let's say I was coaching a 17-year-old, let's say a 15-year-old girl, which is a minor, which is even worse. And she said, he began to pressure me and make me feel uncomfortable about, like having, like kissing or fondling. All she has to do is make that a claim.
Just an accusation.
Yeah, and I'm in the hot seat. Like you're guilty until proven innocent at that point.
It's the seriousness of the charge, not the weight of the evidence.
Exactly. So there are things that I can do, like even hiking. Like a lot of times I've hiked solo because I couldn't find anyone to go with, but there would have been a lot of women hikers that I know that would have gone with me, but by themselves. And I'm like, I won't do that. Like I even had a girl contact me once. She was a pancreatic survivor. She was doing the 48 and read my books, loved them, laughing her head off. She wanted to know if I would go hiking with her. And I said, there has to be somebody else. So she had a friend. That would go. So if there's two women, I feel okay with that. I don't think anything could happen. I mean, not to say something couldn't happen, but I mean, at least there's a safeguard. I will not hike with a woman alone, because that means I'm going to have to get into a car with her alone, travel 2 hours up north alone, hike alone, come back. You know what I mean? It's just like, so those are safeguards that I put in place. I won't travel with them alone. I won't counsel them alone. I won't hike with them alone. And I'll always be accountable. Like my wife always knows where I am. Even if I'm hiking in Pawtucket, I'll tell her I'm hiking, the Split Rock Trail, or, because who knows, I fall down or, so I always, which I do a lot. So, but so as far as the goal, the glory, and the girls, you can do as much as you can, except for the pornography, which is just, like you said, it's so readily available. It's like right there at the snap. Sometimes it's like you're not even looking for it. You don't want it. You're watching a movie. Sometimes it's even commercials that can be highly sensual.
Sometimes it comes up on your feed on social media.
It's just constantly.
I've seen this too, and sometimes I've seen it on my feeds on social media as well. And I'm trying to hit. There's a thing on most apps you can hit not interested, or you can hit see less of this content. So I thought I was the only one having this issue, but I've actually looked at posts from other guys and a whole thousands of comments all saying the same thing, where they'll have a bunch of it on their feed, just the most degenerate stuff imaginable. And what they do is they keep hitting not interested, not interested, not interested. Show me less of this content. Hide video, hide video, hide video, hide video. And then every time they do that, they put more of it on their feed. And here's the kicker. Here's the crazy part. One guy in the comments said he found a solution to this. There's thousands of comments, whole bunch of guys struggling with this. There's one guy in the comments that found a solution. You know what it was? He went on, I think it was Facebook. In your bio, you can have your gender. He changed his gender from male to female. Not literally changed his gender from male to female, but in his Facebook bio, he changed his gender from male to female. Instantly stopped seeing content like that.
No kidding.
Yeah. They push it to men on purpose because their goal is to keep you on the app, because they make money from advertising impressions. I know, because I run ads. So that's where they make their money. They make money off of the advertising views. So the longer they keep you scrolling on the app, the more ads you'll see and the more money they make. So how do you keep a man on the app if you don't know what his interests are? Maybe he's into hiking, maybe he's into football, maybe he's into video games. There's a million different things you could be into, but they know that there's one that pretty much every man to some degree is into. And even if you don't want to see it, they'll keep putting it in front of you because they know that if they put enough of it on your feed, you'll fall for it.
Yeah, eventually.
Goodness.
Yeah,
And
it's that chipping away.
Yeah, and that's the worst part. I know that Mike talked about this, and I think you use this as well he mentioned something called covenant eyes, which is like an accountability thing. So your browsing history and your activity online can be visible to your spouse, to your pastor, to anybody you have on your list.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certain blockers that you can put on your phone that will block like porn sites. And then there is, well, I don't know if it's Covenant Eyes, but I know that there is an app that literally records the keystrokes so that like your accountability partner, or if it's your wife, she can actually see what you've typed. So if you typed in something that was a trigger like porn or, whatever, she sees it. And so there's no getting away from that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And now you had mentioned before you won't go anywhere, being anywhere with another girl alone. And some people can take that and say, well, you shouldn't have to do that. It's about keeping yourself safe, especially. And I wasn't even thinking about the allegations, but brutal world we live in. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, your career would be over if somebody just even said it, even if you weren't even in the same vicinity as them.
Yeah.
There's no witness. Yeah.
Especially the younger you are. I mean, I think something I've got going for me as far as like, falling into a relationship with another woman is 30, well, actually almost 40 years now, 40 years of full-time ministry, where I think most women would say he's honorable, he's respectable, he's not flirtatious, or he's not sending, like little innuendos or hidden messages. He's like, just no.
Yeah.
And I've counseled a lot of women that are in marital problems, and, I can see that's probably another thing too, like pastors that are helping a woman that's in a loveless marriage. It would be very easy if you're looking for inroads,
especially if it's something related to her husband not listening to her.
Sure.
And like you said, what did you call it? Third level listening or level 3 listening?
Right. Yeah. And you're listening and you're showing up for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's very easy for that to, even if it's not intentional, it's very easy for it to spark something.
Right.
That's I didn't know about that. That's actually a really good, really interesting solution. Like you make sure there's somebody else present in the room.
Yeah.
Or at least in the building.
Yeah.
Somewhere next door, somewhere close by.
Or even windows, like you had mentioned.
Windows. Yeah, well, we had an abuse situation in the church years ago. It didn't happen in the church. It happened in a domestic situation, but the person was working in our youth group. And and so we after that whole thing, we just said, okay, we can't have closed doors. We need to have everything accessible. Everything that can be accessible. And when you start talking about children's ministries, like bathroom breaks, you have to have. It's best to have 2 adults present, but a lot of times you don't have the volunteers. But we have cameras as well.
Right.
So
not in the bathrooms, but
not in the bathrooms. No,
Yeah.
that'd be horrible. But those cameras have actually come in very helpful in times where people say something happened and stuff, and it's like, it's not there on the camera.
There it is. There's the evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't happen. But thank you. I mean, to fall away from that. Another question that I had for you that to me seems like a common theme amongst people that have almost sort of a resentment towards they always say religion. Yeah. So why do so many people feel judged or hurt by church communities, and what do you think some of the effects on people that are more curious in Christ and they hear all these terrible stories, and how do you think that can be solved as a whole? And what do you think some of the main points are why people feel so judged and hurt by communities that are supposed to be about love and helping people find a relationship?
Yeah, so 2 things. I think number one, they feel hurt and wounded because they probably were. I mean, there's a lot of churches that are like legalistic. They're just hyper legalistic. And here again, we go back to shooting the wounded. Somebody makes a mistake. Okay, they've made a mistake. And then other people think that, they should be judged harshly. And like, if you don't do that, then like you're just winking at sin and you're not dealing with sin. You should excommunicate them and all this kind of craziness. And again, it goes back to the core what is the core value of the ministry of Jesus? It's redemptive. It's restoration in nature. We're in this together. We're running the race set before us. We're all on different tracks, but we're all running in the same direction. We're fighting the fight of faith, and we need to show up for one another in a much more compassionate, much more helping role. Unfortunately, there's just some churches that they have wounded a lot of people.
Yeah.
There have been some shepherding movements years ago. There was the shepherding movement that became very, very toxic, where pastors became like little gods. Like, you couldn't buy a car unless you ran it by the pastor first. You couldn't date a girl unless you ran it by the pastor first. And they were telling you what you could and you couldn't do. And that's so, it's so far from
It's got to
scriptural.
be a lot of stress on that pastor. I mean,
Yeah, who would want that, right?
Yeah.
should I order Frosted Flakes or Lucky Charms?
Right.
You get 1,000 of those texts a day.
Yeah, I know it. And that's why, I tell people, I'm not God's police officer. I don't care what you do. I'm not God's police. One time I was at Hannaford's and I saw a guy and he had a case of beer under his shopping cart, on that little lower rack. And I could tell he was squirming and very uncomfortable. And I'm like, I don't care. It's your life. You do what you want. I could care less. If you got a problem with drinking, you should probably stop. But I think, so getting back to your question, I think that there's some people that have truly been seriously wounded by the church. I think the other one, there's a lot of people running around saying they were wounded because they couldn't handle criticism. So that's a different thing. To condemn somebody and to hurt them in the body of Christ is wounding to those people. It's going to scar them. But when somebody is doing something wrong and they don't have the capacity to receive godly counsel or criticism, well, that's on them.
Right.
You were wounded in the church because you were being a bonehead and you didn't listen to clear, loving instruction, or counsel. I should say godly counsel. If somebody, and I've had people come in and they've got marital problems, blah, blah, marital problems. He said, she said, we said, they said, but as soon as you start digging it, you find that below all that is alcohol. I remember one couple specifically. Well, we like wine. We're Italian and we drink wine every night with our meal. Okay, but how much?
Right.
By glass 3, you're starting to get crazy.
Could you stop?
Exactly, and it's and that's the whole that's a litmus test right there. Can you stop? I can stop anytime I want, but you don't want, and that's the problem. So if there's somebody that's and I've told people, I say, your marriage problems would literally evaporate if you would quit drinking. And they're like, no, it's a cultural thing. We drink. Okay, well then enjoy your marital problems. There's not a lot you can do to help. So they could say, well, I went to that church and he really wounded me. It's no. I was and I really try to be as tactful as possible and as loving and as there's only. There was one couple that they never came to church. I don't even know if they had a relationship with God. They were living together. They weren't even married. They bought a house together, and then everything headed south. And now they're in a big divorce court or separation court, and they're trying to figure out whose is what because they bought this house together. So they have invested money in real estate, and now they're separating, and they're trying to figure it all out. And they come and see me. And they ranted and raved against each other for about 40 minutes. And finally, I just had enough of it. And I just slammed my hand down on my desk and I said, what does it matter? You're both going to hell anyway. Well, that didn't go over big. Even though the girl got up and ran out of the room, the guy was like, oh, you're right.
Oh, gosh.
So that was a one time in 40 years, so I can be forgiven that one. Usually I'm very tactful, but that time I wasn't. I was just fed up. But I mean, so the bottom line was just you guys, your problem is that you're not even in a relationship with Jesus. You built a relationship outside of the commands of God, which is to be married. You weren't married. You were living together in sin, and you bought property together, and now you're in this huge mess and you don't know how to get out of it, and you're fighting and you're trying to drag me into your fight, and I'm not going to do that because the real problem is you're not living for God.
Right.
And if you're not living for God, then ultimately you are going to end up in hell. So, I mean, you know, I didn't say anything wrong.
Yeah. I do have
just say real love.
How we were talking about people feeling hurt by past experiences going to church, maybe. You know, some, like you said, there's some bad experiences that, you know, and I have people close to me that have had bad experiences, you know, growing up, and it can really put a bitter taste in people about going to church, about even as far as having a relationship with Christ anymore. And in the best way that you could put it, what would be your encouragements to those people to maybe try to find a different place, and some red flags that people could be looking for if they are in that vulnerable state of looking for a church to attend?
You know, try churches, visit churches, but not just once. Visit a church for a good 3 weeks, because you know, anybody can be off, and you know, you can have a bad service, like we have them. You experience like, wow, that was a disaster. So like, give it a, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks. I would say, is it loving? Is it accepting? Is it loving? Do you feel welcomed? Are people greeting you? Are people talking to you? Because that's going to tell you what kind of church it is. Because usually in a loving church, you're not going to get people that are going to be hypercritical, super spiritual, looking down your nose at you. You should have known better, all this kind of stuff. They're going to be more gracious and compassionate to help you in your walk with God rather than to just judge you. So I would say, you know, try a few churches until you feel like there's one, and then commit to it, and see how it goes. And I think, I don't want to be super hard on younger generations, but I think that there is a level of thin skin in the younger generation. You know, they grew up with the participation trophy, like there's nothing wrong with you. You're the best thing that ever happened to the world. You're great. You're all that in a slice of bread. And so then they get out into the real world, and they can't handle the fact that they just got pulled over for doing 50 and a 30, and they freak out, and you know, then they demand their rights. And so yeah, like, don't be so thin-skinned. Like, you know, a church is a family. If you look at a church as a family, there's no perfect family. There's highly dysfunctional families, though, and you can usually get a feel of that pretty quick. There are loving families that, even though they're not perfect, they're still loving families. And that's why I say, look at the church as a family. Don't look at it like, who's the pastor and what's the music like. Look at it like a family. Is this a family that I feel embraced in? Like, when I went to that church in Portsmouth, I immediately felt, I never felt that before. I never felt people actually loving me without me proving myself or not proving myself. Like, just the fact that I walked in the doors, they were shaking my hand and, you know, hugging me, and I was like, wow, this is really nice. So I would say if you look at a church as a family and judge it as a family, is it toxic? Is it healthy? Is it loving? Is it critical? And you get a feel with that. I think you'd get a feel for that within 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
What would you say to the people, because I know this is very popular in our generation, becoming increasingly popular. What would you say to the people that say, I'm just going to have my own relationship with God. It's just going to be me and Jesus, and I don't need to go to church?
Yeah, so years ago, there was a great evangelist, and I can't remember if it was D.L. Moody or not. I want to say it might have been D.L. Moody. And he had a conversation with a guy in the guy's home, and they were sitting by his hearth, by his fireplace. And the guy started talking along this, you know, like, I believe I can, you know, I don't need church, blah, blah. And while he was doing that, D.L. Moody took a poker, and he just took a piece of the coals that was burning there and dragged it aside. And as the guy was talking, he was wondering, like, why did he do that? But as he was talking, he saw that thing immediately began to cool it down and lost its fire. And he kind of got, like, he just got convicted by that alone. So there's some truth to that, you know, the enemy's tactic is separate the weak. So when you look at a wolf pack, the wolf pack doesn't go for the great big, you know, 12-point buck. It's going to go for the little fawn, or it's going to go for the weak and elderly deer, and separate that from the herd and then devour it. So if he can separate you from the herd, you're open game.
Like gazelles, like the lions are always going after the gazelles that are away from the group of 30. It's always the lone one that gets caught
Right.
in
And
the
they say
weeds,
that
man.
the devil walks around like a roaring lion.
Yeah,
So-
right, right. Seeking who he can devour. So it's going to be
Yeah.
that one that's separated, right?
Right.
Now, is it necessary? Is there a law that you can't go to heaven? No, but it's just wisdom. Again, like create boundaries in your life that are going to work for you rather than against you.
Yeah.
And there's some people that are just highly antisocial and they just don't like being around people or being in crowds. But I think, this is where you have to die to self too. There's aspects of ourselves that we have to die to.
Yeah. It's the stuff you learn too. I've learned so much since I've started coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so much that I wouldn't have been able to learn myself. And that's extremely valuable to me. I'm, trying to grow in my faith. And if I wasn't going to church, obviously I wouldn't have met both of you. But outside of just the relationship which is extremely important with the people there, just from a wisdom standpoint, I wouldn't have as many things as I can to lean on when tough times are going to come.
Right.
And to me, that's extremely, extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have one last question for you. We're probably going to start asking everybody that comes on the show. It's the pursuit of purpose. To somebody who isn't sure what their purpose may be or isn't sure why they were put on this earth, how can especially like our younger generation, I think, is really lost in that. Coming from your experiences, I mean, you didn't have the best, you didn't grow up in the best situation. How can young people really find a true purpose in their life if they're really confused about what they want to do?
I think first of all is just look at the fact of your existence. Start there. Why are you here? There's no one else like you. There's never been anyone else like you. There never will be anyone else like you. You have a unique fingerprint. You have a unique DNA code. You have a unique eye scan. I just found out recently that no one has the same kneecaps. Our kneecaps are all...
I did not know that.
The kneecaps are literally like fingerprints nowadays. Dental records. You have so many things that speak to you about you are 100% unique. There never has, never will be another person like you. If God didn't want you, you wouldn't have been here to begin with. But the fact that you're here, you're alive, you have a consciousness, you're self-aware. Why? Why is that? Evolution tells us it's just a crazy chance that it all happened, out of really highly impossibilities. That non-consciousness created consciousness, chaos created design, all these kind of crazy things. So, what's the purpose? Why are you here? And then when you start looking at that, you either come up with you're here for yourself, or you're here for a higher reason. What's that higher reason? And I think that starts leading you into a path of searching for significance. In American culture, we really try to get people to track success. Be rich, make something of yourself. You can be whatever you want to be, which is true. But there are some things that bring success, and then there are some things that bring significance. Significance is a higher calling. Success might mean that I become very selfish and self-absorbed, where significance means I'm going to become minded of other people, because the highest level of joy and fulfillment in life is to actually find some way to minister to somebody else, to better somebody else. Whether I'll give you an illustration. I was out kayaking this morning, and I saw this other kayaker like way off, but he kind of was like coming at me, and I'm like, I don't want to be bothered. So I started going this way, and that kayaker. So like he tracked me down, and we finally met. And he was a young guy. I think he said he was 27. And he asked me about this is the first time he was on the lake, and he didn't know where he was supposed to pay, or if he was supposed to pay. We got in this great big conversation, and he mentioned that he was disabled. And I said, well, what's your disability? He says, I was in a car accident, and I've got some brain damage. He's a big hiker too, but he's getting back into it because he's lost a certain cognitive ability of balance and things like that. But even in his disability, he said, I have found fulfillment in working for this program that's working for the less privileged than him. He says, I'm also working at a ski resort helping children learn how to ski. And so he's finding a way of giving himself back into the lives of other people. And because of that, he's happy even in his disability. And I think when we realize that we weren't put on the planet just for hedonism or for our own self pleasures, but we're here to help other people, that's when we start finding significance in life. Wow. I think, and when people find that, when they find that, who can I find that I can help? Who can I find that I can pour into? That brings a lot of significance. And usually that's going to come through who is the one that gave up the most? And who can I find that gave up the most and have that become my role model? Well, there is a character that gave up everything because he was God and had all the attributes of God, and he laid that aside to become a human being. Didn't mean that he stopped being God. He still was, but he laid aside his omnipotence and his omniscience, and he became a man and died for us in our place. He died on the cross for my sin. That's sacrifice. That's pouring into people. And if God is that kind of God, that he is all about divesting himself for the benefit of somebody else, then how can I do that maybe in a microcosm way? That how can I divest certain aspects of my life that I can show up for other people in their life? And I think that does two things. One, it puts you on a track for emulating and following Jesus, and it puts you on a track for finding significance in life by helping other people.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of the best answers to that question I've ever heard.
I mean really, like that's...
Well, there you go. Just tumbled out of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much
not a problem.
for coming on the show.
Yeah,
I really
thank you for coming on the
appreciate
show.
it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This
Anytime.
has been the Pursuit of Purpose, episode 6. If you guys like this stuff and want to see some more, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to share a message, spread the gospel, help a lot of young men and women, everybody, really. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a blessed day.